Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again from Film Fanatic headquarters. Hope everyone's doing good. It's actually a cloudy day, and I think we might get rain. It's the first cloudy day it feels like we've had in months. The weather has just been so spectacular. So yeah, it's Monday. Today is a holiday, Columbus Day. So I have today off, so I'm just kind of relaxing and to get some practicing in. Got to sleep in a little bit, although I don't really sleep in very much, but get to relax and get some practicing in, and then tonight supposed to do some more recording. We're in the process right now of the band Osmia that I've been playing with, which has been such a probably my favorite experience of 2025. We're in the midst now of working on our first album, so we're taking our time and we're just slowly getting going, and but it's been a lot of fun. So we're gonna do some more recording tonight. So but other than that, it's going. Things are good. So, I Halloween season again is always Halloween, the holiday itself, is always my favorite holiday. Has always been since I was a kid. And so, along with that, you know, obvious traditions come with that, and that's today. It's all about the movies that I watch, and then the main focus of today's show is I'm going to be talking again about Halloween Ends, which was the last Blumhouse film that came out. And I've done other videos on it, but I don't know. I think that movie's worth talking about, and I kind of wanted to do another, I guess, revised review or just a little talk about it. And because that movie was a pretty well, it was like a hot button issue for a long time, and I still hear about that movie. And I watched it again last night. But anyway, around Halloween, I always again, I've said this before. For me, Halloween is like all year round. Like I kind of decorate my house yearly in a Halloween aesthetic. I don't really do anything differently as far as Halloween. A lot of people get into the whole spooky season thing, and then that's when they start watching horror movies. But I watch horror movies all the time, and so really, it's not any different. I always do a Halloween special for Film Fanatic every year, and I'll definitely do one again. Halloween, I think, falls on a Saturday this year, and so I'm gonna definitely do a show for Halloween. Um, and so but there's always these a series of movies that I definitely watch around Halloween, and then I have like that kind of tradition around it. Yeah, I always watch the two movies I always watch around Halloween is Halloween, the first one from 1978, John Carpenter's masterpiece, which I just did a show on where I talked about because I've been kind of in the Halloween franchise mode. I watched both Halloween, the first one, and then a sequel that came out in '81, and I did a show where I talked about reviewed those movies before, and I've talked about those movies, but that experience was different because it was the first time where I sat and watched them literally back to back. So I had a very different experience. It's really interesting how like the context of the way or your frame of mind, how that can really make for a very different and kind of unique and surprising experience. So that's what I did with that show. And before I get into the movies and stuff, I want to thank have had a lot of subscribers jump on board. We're almost at 600 subscribers the last couple of weeks, and then a lot of people commenting on the videos I've been posting, and a lot of new folks who have been subscribing. So I want to give a big thank you and big shout out of love to those folks. I really appreciate it. I can't do this wacky thing without you. So, and I was supposed to do another interview segment. I was going to have a guest on, but that person was sick, got sick, and then I couldn't really do it because of my schedule yesterday. It changed, and so I didn't really have the time. But that is something I'm going to do more of. I keep saying it, but I haven't hasn't actually happened yet because it is a little bit more scheduling wise. It's a lot harder, but it is something that I really love doing, and I'm gonna pursue it more. So yeah, again, I want to thank all the people who have been subscribing. Yesterday, I spent or last night, I spent quite a bit of time responding. I like to respond to all of the comments that are posted, and there were quite a few, and then there were a few I didn't get to. So I spent a pretty decent amount of time getting back and responding to people, and keep it coming. I love that. That's like one of the most enjoyable aspects of doing this channel. Just connected with people who are fellow film fanatics. So usually around Halloween season, again, it's not really any different for me, but I do watch. I definitely watch more Halloween centric films, if you will, on Halloween. So I always watch. I have a tradition which I've done for years and years and years, but I always watch John Carpenter's Halloween, and then the other movie I always watch, which is now it kind of has always been, but I bought it on Blu-ray about 3 or 4 years ago, and now I watch it every year, and that is Dark Night of the Scarecrow, which I think is one of the greatest Halloween themed movies. It might be the best. It might be, but I love that movie to death, and so that's a movie I always talk about around Halloween, and then that's a movie I always watch every year. I got this really beautiful edition of Dark Knight of the Scarecrow about 3 years ago on Blu-ray, and it's just spectacular. That was a movie too. It's a real low budget, really made for TV movie, but it is so incredibly creepy and atmospheric. And it's definitely part of the kind of low budget exploitation world, and it's essentially it was a made for TV movie, but it is so effective and just so awesome, everything about it. So I'm excited about watching that movie. I usually only watch that movie on Halloween typically, and then I will watch it out of season. But and then the same thing with Halloween, I will tend to watch that at a season too. But I usually always stick. Um, I always usually religiously watch it every Halloween. So again, today's show is on a movie I have talked about before, but I feel like, well, it's a different perspective. I do think movies are kind of like wine or fine wine things, because I definitely think movies age. Movies that are a part of your life, they really age, and sometimes things really hold up, sometimes they don't. And so, at least for me, my perspective on certain films changes over time. So, I think there's it's a valid thing, and I think it's because of that. I think it's worth talking about it and doing shows on a movie from a slightly different angle. So today's show is on Halloween Ends, which is a movie that it's hard to believe it came out like 3 years ago. And I got this really beautiful Blu-ray edition of this film. I also, at the same time when I bought this Halloween Ends, which was the last of the Blumhouse David Allen Green installment for Halloween, I also picked up a really beautiful version of Halloween, the original from '78. I had never gotten that. I was surprisingly hard to find, but I finally got a really great edition. So, and then I also bought Halloween Ends at the same time. And this movie is just has such an interesting, I guess, world around it. It was such a I guess a controversial movie, you could say, and for good or bad, for people who liked it or people who didn't like it, and most people actually hated this movie, like really hated it. It was one of the most talked about movies that I remember in recent history. There were people. I remember when this movie came out, and it came out in 2022, which is crazy, 3 years ago. it was definitely a movie that people, critics alike, that they just tore this movie to pieces. They really reamed this movie a new asshole. And then also, not only did it get really bad reviews, but people really tore it apart. And that's when, I remember there was this whole thing on Facebook and on social media of people who, I guess consider themselves fans of the Halloween franchise, which is, a massive franchise. And I think it's, as a whole, I think the franchise is like not really great. I mean, there are movies in the franchise that are awesome. Of course, the John Carpenter original is amazing. And I have to say, rewatching the second one that came out right after John Carpenter's movie, and the experiment that I did, I watched both of them recently. It didn't hold up at all. Like, it's kind of a piss poor movie. I have to say, like, that's really changed for me. So I don't. I have to say, I don't really. I didn't really like it. Like watching it. It just felt like. I mean, Halloween. John Carpenter's Halloween still, I think, completely holds up in every way. But watching, I felt like when I watched Halloween 2, it was like this total like depreciation of value, where it just like you just saw the level, for me at least, it just like sunk to the bottom of the ocean in comparison to Halloween, where it was just like so uneven. And it was weird because I've always kind of loved that movie, and I guess I still do like it, even though, because I watch a lot of crap. I watch a lot of weird exploitation movies that most people wouldn't really like anyway. But I totally believe in that whole thing of it's so bad it's good, and I totally think that that is true. Where movies are so extreme in their nature, as far as maybe just terrible things about it, but it ends up kind of working. It's like this weird little switch where it ends up kind of working for the movie, and it makes the film a lot more just campy and entertaining in its own weird way. And things, and with age, I feel like it gets even more ridiculous and silly with those films. And then you have movies that I feel like just don't age well. Like, they're just bad. And I think there's you have the case too when you hear that, kind of view. It's so bad it's bad. And I think that's a big case of, that's a serious thing where movies don't mean when you watch them later on in life, or and they're just dated, but dated in the wrong way, and it doesn't hold up. And Halloween 2 was like that. I always liked that movie growing up. I always watched it. I'd seen it so many times, and then I bought a Blu-ray edition of it a few years ago. And but watching it in this context, it was like, wow, man, this movie is kind of awful. But yet, because it was a part of my youth, I'll probably still watch it, but I don't put it up on the pedestal that I kind of did at one point. I definitely don't. And then after that, the other movie, which I think is arguably probably the greatest in the franchise, is Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, which is another movie I will be watching very shortly. That's another movie I typically watch on Halloween. I love that movie so much, and it's so bonkers crazy. It's so weird. It's very. It has nothing to do with the Michael Myers storyline, which I think is so awesome, and it was a big swing. And that movie also, there's so many parallels between Season of the Witch, Halloween 3, and Halloween Ends, where both movies were eviscerated by critics. They both completely financially flopped in the box office, and people hated the movie. And over time, how many years it's been, 30 years or whatever, since like Season of the Witch came out. Now that movie is regarded as this horror movie exploitation masterpiece. And I now people like love that movie. I barely, there's not really any time of where I don't hear that movie talked about now in a much positive light. And people really now embrace that movie. And it took a long time for people to come around to that movie because it's so weird, it's so bonkers, and it is completely different. And I feel like the same thing is happening with Halloween Ends, and I think I mean, literally, it's followed the same exact trajectory, which is just kind of crazy. You know, the same climate, the same rejection from critics, the same rejection from fans. You know, just totally failing in the box office. But I've seen, you know, even though it's been out for 3 years now, but I have seen people come back to that movie and revisit it and have a very different opinion. I've slowly seen that, and it's kind of this thing of like, huh, okay, it's following the same trajectory. And I think the other similarity with Halloween Ends is that it's similar in a way because it is so radically different than anything else in the franchise. They really took a chance with that movie. Like they really swing hard. And you know, I think it's probably I think Halloween Season of the Witch is a better movie. But there's so many things about Halloween Ends that I really like. And it's just interesting seeing this real interesting parallel. You know, the other parallels that I've always talked about is like the trajectory of the Blade Runner films, the first two. Well, when the first one came out, the same thing happened. It was rejected. People thought it was terrible. Critics hated it. And then it got this, you know, became this legendary movie years later after people were starting to watch it again on VHS. And then it grew and grew and grew. And now it's like regarded as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, science fiction film of all time, which I kind of think it is. And then when Blade Runner 2049 came out with Ryan Gosling, same exact thing. That movie was hated by critics. A lot of people said it was boring, and it didn't. It bombed. It bombed in the box office big time. And then the same exact trajectory as the original Blade Runner. And then subsequent years later, now I see people talk about that movie in such a higher regard and saying that that movie was kind of a masterpiece. I love that movie to death, and I know a lot of people hate it. So it's interesting how that happens. You know, when a movie comes out that is tied to this like iconic IP or franchise, and yet it is very different and messes with your expectations. And I think Blade Runner 2049 was very different that way. They generally take a chance instead of trying to make a carbon copy film, and then you know after it's out, where something that was initially just totally rejected, people come back to it and now look at it as this, you know, really awesome film. So it's very interesting how that happens. And Halloween Ends again came out in 2022, and I remember when the film came out, it was people were because the Halloween fan base is really rabid. I mean, as far as franchises go, I think as far as massive fan bases, the two horror franchises that have the biggest is definitely Friday 13th, which I'm a really big fan of that because I love all of those movies. Like there isn't, I mean, I know that quality goes up and down a little bit, but overall, I just totally love that franchise. I love every movie, even the kind of the shitty ones that were cut. I still love those. And the fan base for that is massive, massive, massive. And then for Halloween also, people are rabid about the franchise. But as far as like other movies in the franchise that I think are really good, I like the other one. I think it was called, which I do want to get. Paul Rudd was in it. I think it's called Curse of Michael Myers, where they kind of incorporate this like cult, this like death cult that's in part of the film or the story. And I remember really liking that movie, but I do want to see it again. I want to get it on Blu-ray too. But the rest of the movies were kind of terrible. The other one that I thought was really, really good is Halloween H2O, which is actually a really awesome movie. I've talked about that movie before. I want to get that on Blu-ray. I really love that movie actually. Um, and then Halloween Ends is a movie too that I really like. I think it's really good. I've seen it. I saw it in the theater. It was really interesting. I saw it in the theater when it came out, amidst hearing so many terrible things about that movie. So many terrible things. And I remember I really couldn't even find a friend or a person who was interested in seeing it. So I was like, fuck it. I'm going to just go see it. And I'm going to go see it myself. And I went to the matinee and I saw it in the theater. And about 25 minutes into it, I was just like, wow, okay, this is different. And I found myself into watching. I was into it, and then I was like, wow, that was surprising, and I came away with this feeling of kind of actually enjoying it. And I'm like, what the fuck? And then I ended up buying it on Blu-ray shortly after that, and I've seen it a few times since then. I've seen it probably 4 or 5 times. So it's one of my favorite movies in the franchise, and I think it's definitely out of the three David Allen Green films. I think it's easily the best. It's not a perfect movie. I wouldn't say it's like on par totally with obviously Halloween the original, and probably overall my favorite of the franchise, Season of the Witch. It's not on par with that to a degree because I think some of the characters, some of the writing might be a little bit clunky, if you will. But there are certain things in the movie and certain themes and areas that the movie goes to and certain sequences that I just think are awesome, like really good. And again, like coming off of Halloween Kills, which was such a gore fest movie, but the story was so cockamamie and unbelievable. This movie, Halloween Ends, has a lot less gore in it, which I thought was cool and surprising. But the gore that's in Halloween Ends and the kills that's actually in, like, there's like about 5 or 6 kills in Halloween Ends that I just think are super awesome and brutal as all hell. And I feel like that movie gets underappreciated all around. But I think when it comes to the kills, there's some kills in that movie that are just super nasty, particularly around the scene of the radio show host who gets his tongue cut out. Like it's brutal, and I think it that was one of the criticisms of that movie was that there was no gore or not enough gore. That one of many. Um, and the cast for Halloween Ends, I think, is pretty solid. I think there's some, maybe some clunky things that happen around Jamie Lee Curtis's character, Laura Strode. There's some things in it that are maybe a little bit clunky and maybe not so great, but I still think it really, really works. The character I really do like and the actor I really like is Rowan Campbell, who plays Corey Cunningham. I think he's a really uh, fresh face. I like him a lot. I think he was really engaging. I really like his character in the movie. I think his kind of transformation into this evil, like, well, to a degree, new incarnation of Michael Myers is really cool. What happens to his character is like kind of shocking and surprising. Some people hated it, but well, they hated everything about the movie. But I actually really like him as an actor. He's in a new movie that's coming out, a new slasher movie. I think it's a remake of Silent Night, and I've heard that's really good. It's really cool that because that movie was so destroyed in the box office and rejected by people. And again, I think I've been seeing more and more people come back to that movie, to Halloween Ends, and kind of revisit it and get on board and enjoy it. But I'm really happy that I've seen Rowan Campbell in a few movies. Like his career isn't. I thought this movie would, because I liked him in the movie. I think he's the best part of the movie, and I thought his career was probably going to be over after this movie because he's a young actor. He's a new, fresh face. But I've seen him in subsequent movies, and he's in this new movie coming out, which he is in the lead, and he's good. Like I dig him. I saw him in this one other movie recently, which I can't remember the name of it, but he was pretty good in it, and I was surprised, and I was like, wait, that's the same kid. So nice to see that, and the rest of the cast are pretty solid. Jamie Lee Curtis, of course, James Jude Courtney, who plays the really old man version of Michael Myers, is really great. Nick Castle makes an appearance, the original Michael Myers. Andy Matchek is also in it. Kylie Richards. Again, they're it's not. I watched it again last night, and overall, I get really into this movie, and I really think it's good. But it's not a perfect movie. I think there are some things around the characterizations and even some of the dialogue and some of the things around Laurie Strode's Jamie Lee Curtis's character that are a little bit, I don't know, maybe ham-handed or a little bit cheesy, but not in a good way. But overall, I think everything else in the story make up for it, and it makes for a really good experience. I think this movie actually, there's one sequence in this movie in particular where Corey Cunningham's character and Michael Myers go out initially on this killing spree, and they go to. There's this one sequence in this movie that I just think is amazing. There's two in this movie that I just think are so awesome. The one sequence of where they go to this doctor's house, and he's having like an affair with this nurse, and this guy, this doctor, and this woman who plays the nurse, they're uh, total shitheads, and they're just kind of gross people, and you kind of want to see them die because that's one thing I do like about this movie is all the people who do get killed. They're kind of nasty people that you kind of hate, and you kind of want, like, you end up having empathy and sympathy for. You kind of want to see them get killed and slaughtered. And there's one sequence in this movie where Michael Myers and Corey Cunningham's character, they go to the house of this doctor and his mistress, and and they both get totally slaughtered. And it's such an awesome sequence. Like it's there's something about the way it's shot. The music is really really awesome, and the kills are awesome. Like really really good, and the whole thing, the whole production for that sequence is just really good. Like I just think it's got great atmosphere. It's really creepy. It's brutal as hell, and very satisfying. And then there's the other sequence in the movie that I think is just incredible, where Corey Cunningham goes to the radio station and goes after this jockey, who again is this total asshole, and slaughters him and cuts his tongue out of his head. That sequence is like shocking and brutal as all hell, and it's amazing, and it's got just incredible atmosphere. The music for Halloween Ends, I think, is really really good. There's a lot of cool kind of '80s synth electro music, and some of the orchestral stuff in the film is just really really awesome. So there's some things about this movie that I think are really just fun and really really good. And I like that this movie, even though it's so different in every way possible than the other movies, I think it, because the slasher genre is my favorite genre in the world. This movie, I feel, is like really a good slasher movie. Like it actually is a really good slasher movie, and it feels like a good slasher movie. So that's the thing. One of the things I love about it. It's not trying. I mean, it's swinging for the fences, and for the most part, it's successful. And it's really just whacked out as far as them really trying. They really tried to do something different with this film. They tried doing it with the first two films, Halloween and then Halloween Kills. They tried to do something different, but I don't think it was very successful. It didn't really land for me. But this one, they go even more bonkers crazy, but I think for the most part, they land. And so, yeah, I don't know. I really like this movie, and I know it's probably safe to say most people still hate it, but I have seen people come back around to this movie and talk about it more and give it more of a positive view, and so I wanted to take another crack doing another video on Halloween Ends because I think it's good. I think it's worth watching. It's fun. It's got great kills, got great atmosphere. So yeah, check it out. Check it out. Thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.